All right, good morning, everyone. We are hoping to have some live streamers, and we told them 8 o'clock, so I need to get started. Welcome to Mantec's first Manufacturing Matters. Today, we're going to hear about how quality system can reduce human errors. Mantec is connecting specialty solutions for manufacturers in the areas of sales and marketing, process improvement, manufacturing technology, and workforce engagement. So today is in the process improvement category. We have some other things that are going to be happening in this series. We cover 9 counties, which means we want to cover 9 counties. So we have the web streaming for those that couldn't join us today, and we'll be covering different topics in our other areas. So the next one is March 3rd over at L2 Brands in Hanover, and that will be automating and customizing the lead generation process. From what we gathered on this one, we filled the room pretty much, and we don't know the cutoff yet for that event, but we're going to just encourage early registration for that. The next big event is March 19th. Our Smart Manufacturing Conference is our big spring event. It brings manufacturers best practices to all of our manufacturers. The name dropping that I'm going to do for this, we have Wolfgang Confectionaries, Caputo Brothers, Creamery, there are keynotes, and then we have BAE Systems that's going to talk about AR and the different technology that they are using. Printastat and the Hershey Company are going to talk about 3D scanning. I saw an example of it. It's amazing, so I'm very excited about that presentation. Sim Insights will talk about virtual reality, and WebFX and Pacer Pumps are going to talk about how an Amazon Marketplace changed their revenue stream. So that's now available for registration as well. And then Mantec got involved in Women in Manufacturing. We have some women in the room. It's a new chapter that we formed, and we have our launch event February 13th at Turkey Hill Experience. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our host today at the H&H Group. And Mike.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, let me be the first to welcome you to the
Keep coming this way. Be in this.
I'm going to keep coming this way and be in this way. Let me be the first to welcome you to the H&H Group. We've been in business for about 45 years. Is everyone here from Lancaster County? No? Well, welcome to Lancaster County as well. I hope you enjoy some stuff while you're here today. Today we're going to be talking, after this meeting, we're going to be hosting some tours. We would welcome you to see our production facility. We are a manufacturer of all kinds of printed goods in support of marketing and sales, including signs, books, all sorts of those things, and that will all be available on the tour. If you need anything while you're here, you can see Mary or I, and we'll get you connected and hooked up. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thanks, Mike. All right. Now our presenter is Rick Litz from Litz Quality Technologies. He has done work with Mantec for 20 plus years at least. Great provider of ours and quality expert. So, Rick.
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. And it's an honor to be here to do this presentation for Mantec. Great organization, and as Leanne said, been associated with Mantec for 20 plus years. So it's seen a lot of change. It's a great organization to be involved with. I'm happy to have you all here today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a presentation about human factors, right, in manufacturing. We are all impacted by human factors, right? So there are some things out there that deal with human factors. We're going to go through, some of the issues, that we see in the news that might be related to human factors. We see things every single day. We're also going to define what a quality management system is, and it's just a refresher from that standpoint because everyone typically is involved in some sort of, management system. But it also just doesn't affect a quality management system. But when we're talking about the manufacturing, we're typically talking a lot about the manufacturing and human factors. We're going to discuss the sustained success of an organization and the organizational environment and how that might impact the human factors and the impact on the business or the organization. And we're we're going to talk about the 7 quality management principles and those that are involved in some of the ISO standards and so forth. These standards, many of them are developed based on these principles. Right? So having an understanding of them and how it impacts the environment as well as the human factors, we'll take a look at that. And then many of us are familiar with the PDCA cycle, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, and we'll talk about how that impacts this human factors and what we should be looking for. Review the process approach. Everyone here works in some sort of process, and there are things that go on in the process and are impacted by human factors. And then we'll review some history of human factors. It's nothing new. So we'll talk about, how did this thing get started? What is it all about? And then there's what's known as the dirty dozen in human factors. And when you're dealing with this, there are these dirty dozen that we have to think about. And then we'll look at the 4 principles that were related to the human factors. And then there are the 6 main categories. And then we'll look at some keys for an error management system plan, known as an EMS, not environmental management system, although it would apply to any type of management system, no matter what type you're involved in. And we'll look at the integration of the root cause analysis and human factors. If we have problems or issues, we're supposed to go through some sort of process to determine what caused the problem, and then we're supposed to address it so that it doesn't recur, right, with the corrective action system. So we'll talk about that. And then there's an error management maturity model that we'll talk about towards the end. So if you are interested in doing some of these things related to the human factors and so forth, this is a model that you can adopt within your organization. So this term breaking news, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of turning on the news and everything is breaking. And it doesn't seem like there's any just normal news anymore. It's all breaking, right? So besides that, what are some things that you have heard about on the news or in media that were related to human factors? What are some?
Max.
737 Max. And how were human factors impacted that?
I guess the ability to control the plane and then all the things that led up to that situation. Internally.
Exactly. What you're hearing all kinds of things that, I saw in the news that something said that the engineers were clowns that designed it, right? Because of, what they did and so forth. And then there's also the management that apparently the news is saying that, well, they made some decisions to not include the second system, for cost cutting, but then the airlines could go and buy, the additional system if they wanted to. So those are all human factors. Okay? What else? This week there was a helicopter crash, right? So, with the death of Kobe Bryant and so forth, there's a pilot who had over 8,200 hours of flying, top-notch pilot. There may be some human factors, I don't know yet, of course, but there may be some human factors there that impacted that. Okay? What else? Anything else?
In Iran, when they accidentally targeted a missile at one of the civilian aircraft.
Okay. And then, catastrophe and so forth. Anything else?
I mean, in reality, what is now tied into a human factor? I mean, even at this point, environmental causes, you could say that are tied into human behavior and actions.
Exactly. So human factors affect everything. Now, all those things that we just talked about are not positive things, right? What have you heard that was a positive thing related to human factors?
Thank you.
Anybody do something that was really good to prevent something from occurring or happening? So, silence. So we tend to think of only those things that cause problems. On the news the other night, there was a elementary school in, I think it was Maryland area, where they teach kindness, and that's the theme of the school. The principal had a student whose father needed a kidney. She donated her kidney to the father. And they're recovering. They showed, a picture of the principal, the father, the child, and so forth. So that was a tremendous human factor that implemented something, right? That impacted life. So when we do this, really think about positive things also. And sure, in all your businesses, there are a lot of positive things going on that human factors influence, right? As an auditor, unless an auditor for AS 9100 as well as 9001 and so forth and type of things, we always point out the positive things first, at the end of an audit, always. And then we talk about the improvement potentials. And some of these improvement potentials have an impact on human factors and are related. So it's very. Let's move on. So the point of that wonderful video was that if you have ever seen some of these parking signs around that say you can park, from 8 to 10, p.m., except on Sundays, but holidays you can park, right? And they have the times and so forth. And then you're trying to figure it out, and then you go back, and then you've got a parking ticket. So then it comes down to, is it your fault, or is it the design of the sign? So it comes down to that. It's really the design of the sign, right? And one time I was in Philadelphia and looking to park. There's all kinds of signs, and there was someone from the parking authority there. And the person was standing there looking up, reading the signs. So I walked up to him and said, I'm new to Philadelphia. Can I park here? And he said, I don't know. I said, excuse me? And he said, I don't cover this area of the city normally. I'm here filling in. He said, I'm trying to figure out what those signs mean. And I said, if I park here, you're going to give me a ticket. He said, I'm not sure yet. And then he said, well, these signs are designed for 5th grade reading level. And I said, I think we have a problem with the sign. I'm an engineer, and I said, I don't know what it says, right? So human factors, can lead us astray in some cases. So we talk about error management programs. So really what we're looking for is some sort of discipline that explains the underlying reasons for human errors, right? So it's really a discipline. And when we talk about errors, typically there are 3 classifications of errors. There's a skill-based error where, a task, someone's been doing a task for many, many years, and then they go to do it, and then something isn't right. We also have decision errors where they proceed as intended, but essentially the process wasn't robust enough to give the results, right? So you make decisions every day. And then we have a perceptual error. So input degraded sensory perception and so forth, and that can lead to incorrect things. I'm exhausted, right? And I'm supposed to do a critical operation, right? Can I do it, right? Yeah, I can do it, right? So I've got the perception that yes, I can do it, but I may not have all of the, faculties to do it to make sure that the output is correct. We all know that, with the business, we're looking for sustained success. We want to be around for a long time, right? And then some things that impact that are the organization's environment. So the environment is made up of internal and external issues. So you have many, many things that are impacting you. So if we talk about the internal issues, we talk about, okay, we've got the employees, right? We've got the equipment, we've got the resources to do things. When we talk about the external issues, we've got customers, we've got providers, suppliers. The new term now in the quality management system standards, like ISO 9001 and some of those others, the term supplier is not used anymore. It's gone. It is called providers, right? So providers can be any organization that provides something to you. So typically, if you're leasing equipment, those are providers. You don't own that. You may pay for some of it, or if you have some, argon or some gas, typically you don't own the tank that it's in, but you pay for the, the gas and so forth that's in it. Well, that's considered to be a provider, right? So the standards are saying you need to consider providers, not just suppliers. So they got rid of the term suppliers and so forth. But some of the, external factors would be laws, regulations, things that you have to comply with. Safety. So, but a quality management system is not involved in safety, okay, of the organization, because there's other things that you have to comply with related to that. This is only related to the quality management system, but it can be used throughout. So you have to consider the sustained success of an organization as well as the environment related to human factors. Push you. So when we talk about a quality management system, the term is usually broken down into two terms. One is, what is a management system? So a management system is nothing more than a set of interrelated elements to establish policies and objectives and put processes in place to achieve it. That deals with any type of management system that you have. So a quality management system is nothing more than a management system, but it's aimed at, the definition says control, okay, of quality. But I like to use the word assurance. So rather than trying to control things, we want to assure that what we're doing is going to give us the result that we expect, rather than trying to control everything. Right? So this comes out of the Fundamentals Vocabulary Standard. The Quality Management System Standard 9001, the AS 9100, and so forth, and soon to be the new medical device one, is based upon 7 management principles. And the 7 are, one is the customer focus. So as an organization, you need to be focused on what the customer wants, what they expect now, as well as in the future. We always say we'd like to stay one step ahead of the customer, so when they realize they need something, we have it. The second one then goes to leadership. So leadership of an organization leads the organization to meet what you want and the objectives of the organization. Engagement of people, this is a change in terminology from previous management system standards. The word before was involvement, okay? It has now been changed to the engagement of people. So, all people are competent And competence is defined as someone's ability to apply skills and knowledge. So if someone has skills, knowledge, and they can apply that, they're considered to be competent. Right? So then process approach, this is how business and organization works. With any of these standards, you don't work clause by clause of a standard, you work by process. And then there are certain requirements of the standards that impact different processes. And then improvement, we know we can always do things better. As studies have been done by ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, they said that most successful companies focus on improvement. Evidence-based decision-making is the next one. Facts help us make better decisions. All of you make decisions every day. The impact of human factors, and sometimes we're right, sometimes we're not. But if we take data, look at the data, analyze it to see what it's showing us, and then we make a decision based on data, we have a higher chance of success in meeting what we are trying to do or improve. And the last one is the relationship management. So within an organization, you have to manage all these relationships, both internal and external. And now the standards have a new term in them, and that term is called interested parties. Right? So we have to determine who are the interested parties of the organization, internal and external. And not only that, you have to determine what are their interests. How are you determining if you're meeting your interests? And if you're not meeting their interests, you need to do something to improve. So many of these things might involve the human factors. We've probably all heard of this PDCA cycle by one of the quality gurus many years ago, where in order to do something, you plan, you do, you check, and you act upon it. Now, what has happened is it has gone further, and it's gone further in the fact that now you have to consider the interested parties as well as the context of your organization in the PDCA cycle. And then again, that brings into play the human factors, because now you have these interested parties, which could be, again, the providers, right? It could be some of the regulatory agencies, could be the customers, et cetera, right? Could be the stockholders, shareholders, they all have interests. So now you're required to take a look at those and make sure that things are going the way that they should, and if they're not, we need to improve. There is an organization, it is called the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, formed in 1957. They are the world's largest organization that is focused on human factors in all walks of life. So they envision the future in the second paragraph there, reach relevant and quality human factors, ergonomics, throughout the world and everything that we do. They're involved in 58 countries around the world, and about 15% of the members are students. So there's a high, emphasis by the students, right, in wanting to know about this human factors, issue and so forth. Anyone never heard of this organization? Yes, some have, and some haven't. But this goes back a very long way. Back in the early 1950s, Boeing hired their first human factors professional, okay, as a position within Boeing to help with the design and so forth of the aircraft, as well as what do people want, right? How do they fit in? And I would say that there's still room for improvement for seats on airplanes. Right, the design of those affect the human factors and so forth. And if you've seen some of the new designs that have come out on some aircraft, now they're starting to stagger that middle seat. All right, they've moved it back, right, so that you give some more room so you don't have to climb over the top and make it a little bit easier and so forth. So that came about by some of the human factors that all of us may have been complaining about, with the airlines and so forth. So they were listening. So with the human factors, the impact, okay, as far as that, it's in many industries well known, and the potential consequences can be quite catastrophic. So when we were talking about the first question, what are some of the things in the news, we were focused on those catastrophic things. But there are a lot of really, really good things that humans are doing, right? that are very, very positive, right? So to address human factors, an organization needs some sort of a risk management process in place. Those involved in ISO 9001 or some of the other standards and so forth, there's something called risk-based thinking, which is not risk management. But then some of the other standards, the environmental, the medical device, the aviation-based defense, they also require an additional risk management program. So you need to have two things in place for those systems, not just one. So the human factors can be addressed separately. A process, which is what everyone is involved in and everything that you do, is a set of interrelated interacting activities that transform inputs and outputs. So something comes in, you have an input, you do activities, then there's an output. And when you're doing those activities, you are following maybe some specifications, regulations. You're maybe following some of your internal procedures, work instructions. There may be some resources you need, like equipment, documentation, and so forth. And then there's the human factor, and you have the skills, knowledge, competencies related to that. So therefore, the whole process is affected by human factors. So when do we get anything out that's right? So a process emphasizes understanding meeting requirements. They need to consider process in terms of added value. Anyone doing any processes that you get no value out of, but you have to do it? Someone said, you need to do it. That's a lot of head shaking yes, right? So that's room for improvement. And then it helps with achieve process performance, and then improvements based upon evaluation data and so forth. So all these processes need to be evaluated somehow, some way to determine if you are meeting requirements. We talk about having a process owner for all of these processes. The process owner has some requirements, and they are responsible for defining the methods, the procedure, work instructions, any of those things that you need to do the process. They are also the person to contact if people have questions. So if you have a customer service process, there's someone that has said, okay, this is what we need to do in order to meet the demands of what our customers want. And then they're also responsible for making sure that the employees are trained in those requirements, right? Because they're not trained in requirements and they don't know what to do, then the outputs are in jeopardy. And again, some of that could be the human factors. So if we look at a diagram of a process, we have the inputs, the activities, those things that we do, and then the output. And then some of the other things that impact all processes are interactions. So the customer service process within an organization interacts with many other processes, right? So you're relying on each other's communication. And then we talk about key performance indicators or KPIs. What's the metric that determines whether the processes are working or if it's not. So all of these, no matter what kind of process you have, these are the things that we look for. So as an auditor, if I'm coming in and doing an audit to your facility, you define what your processes are, and then I'm going to ask, a process summary diagram or anything that describes what your process does, and so forth, right? And if you have, that's great. If you don't, you might want to consider something like that. So the sequence of processes is, if we have sequence number one, office planning, there's an input, comes in, might be a customer order. Then they do things following that previous diagram, and then there's an output. This might be the production package. That production package then goes to the production process. That production process takes that output from the previous one, uses that as their input. They go through and they do things, and then out of that comes let's say, the acceptable product. So it brings up the concept that everyone in the organization, you have an internal customer and you have an external supplier, essentially, to you, or a supplier doesn't have to be external. But everybody has internal customers and internal suppliers or providers. All these standards say you have to determine customer satisfaction. It does not say that it's your external customer. It does not. right? So I'm extremely happy if I go in an organization, do an audit, and they say, oh, we also do, surveys of our internal customers, one process to the next, to determine, what's going on and are there human factors impacting it. So this is what happens throughout your business. So for all processes, as an auditor, we're looking for, is the process appropriately defined and determined? Our responsibility is assigned, right? As they say, you have to assign responsibilities and authorities, and there's a difference between responsibility and authority. And then, are the process adequately implemented and maintained? And then, is the process effective in achieving desired results? And now, a little bit further. Have human factors been determined? Right? So in the customer service process, have you considered human factor input and their effects on it? If you have the so-called purchasing or supply chain process, have you looked at human factors? If you have a production or manufacturing process, or design and development, or shipping, are you looking at human factors? Because they can have a significant impact on all these processes that you are involved in. The dirty dozen can generate. Yes, sir.
What would be examples of human factors in those processes? Create your process diagram.
So, for instance, customer service. Okay, let's say that you quote something, and there are some exceptions that you take from what the customer wants in the proposal or quote. You send it to them. Now an order comes in, and now someone doesn't check the order versus the quote to see, oh, did we say we can't do something? So if they decided not to do that as part of the, let's say, procedure or standard requirements, now if you accept that order, you have accepted what you said you can't do. And now the expectation is that you meet the customer requirement. And then that can cause all kinds of problems. So the human factor input is someone decided not to do it, forgot to do it, was so familiar with the customer they knew that they would accept it. And then that leads to problems with the next process, and the next process, and maybe it gets to production and say, we can't do that. So that's an example. And then we could go, purchasing, the same type of thing and so forth there. So dirty dozen, fatigue being mental or physical. Okay. Slept at a Holiday Inn last night, so no. Lack of communication, failure to, or lack of. You have a couple shifts. First shift is waiting to get out. Second shift is coming in. See you later. Right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I don't believe what first shift did, so I'm going to tear things down and start all over again. Right? Or second to third, or third to first. Right? So communication. Lack of knowledge or complacency. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what to do, right? Works every time. Then my question is, what if you get a change? It's like you may not, so that's a human factor that you may have it. Or it might be, oh, I've got this drawing in here in my toolbox. I just pull it out and look at it. Okay, show me what's the revision. That's 5 revisions ago. It's like, oh, okay, that's a problem. Lack of knowledge, changing technology, right? Trying to keep up with all of this, and skills. Distraction, responsible for at least 15% of all aviation accidents. Right? Someone got distracted. Okay. Right? There's a statistic out there that says 80% of aviation accidents are caused by human factors, human error. Lack of teamwork, large organizations, that's more common than small organizations. Lack of resources, what we you have all the great things. Well, no, but I was told to do the best I can. And I did the best I can, but it's not right. So then I get yelled at for not doing the right thing. Right? Pressure on time. Everybody's after on time delivery and performance and so forth, right? Constantly. Lack of assertiveness, ability to express your feelings, opinions, beliefs in a positive manner. I had one company I'm working with, it's a family business, started by the father in the garage. And then the daughter is involved in quality and so forth. So I was talking about the standard has something about feelings. And she kind of stared at me and said, "You mean to tell me that I have to tell my dad that if somebody's feelings are hurt, he has to do something about it?" She said, "That's not going to work." She said, "You tell him." I said, okay. And then stress, right? We all have stress and lack of awareness, and negative norms are normal. Actual way things are done. Well, you have a whole process set up, and then you find out, well, that's not how it's done. Somebody said, "Oh, this is a better way to do it. I'm going to do it that way." What would you think of these 12 is the number one cause of human errors?
Communication.
Communication. Anyone else?
Awareness.
Complacency. Pressure. Distraction. Number one, fatigue. Mental or physical. It's the number one. So, think about that. If you don't get sleep and there are all kinds of things going on and everything, whether it be difficult to try and do so many things, it's just a mental overload. That's the one. So there are 4 principles that apply to the defects. We call them defects or non-conformances in manufacturing. One is 0 defect and non-conformance. So some sort of indicator, KPI for the operation. 0 defects, nothing new. My business was located in Philadelphia Navy Yard. In Philadelphia Navy Yard, and you can still drive through the Philadelphia Navy Yard and you'll see signs up on the buildings. 0 defects. Right? You can hardly see them. So back in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, they're talking about 0 defects. Defect non-conformance reporting and using the PDCA cycles mandatory. Right? You need to do something, plan, do, check, and act if there's some sort of non-conformity. 3, managing human factors is an individual team management responsibility because it's all encompassing. We also have, and the correct execution requires that you have a structured approach to plan and integrate quality in the work processes. Right? The new requirement in ISO 9001, as well as the other management system principles, says that you are required to show how you integrate your quality management system into your business management system. As an auditor, I'm going to talk to the top management of the organization and say, how did you integrate the quality system into your business management system? Because for years and years, if you have a quality system, one fist, and business system, the other, they fight each other. Some in business system, well, why do we have to do this? Well, quality said we had to. Right? And it's like, all right, so the International Organization for Standardization and feedback from auditors said, we need to do something about this. They can't fight each other. They integrate into one another. So now the requirement is you have to show how you're doing this, the integration. And if I ask management and I get different answers, I'm going to write a non-conformance against top management. And they're going to have to do a corrective action, right, in order to show how they are integrating this in. So all of these things are affected by the human factors. So the responsibilities of the management team, essentially, they need to introduce best practices within the organization. It just doesn't happen. They make sure that, there's a robust process in place. Make sure the staff is trained and informed in human factors and provide an environment that promotes open reporting and treating people fairly. I ask organizations during audits, is there anything going on that you haven't made mention of? A lot of times I just get a big smile. And then that, okay, there are things. So then at the team level, team embraces this team excellence, helps in preventing errors, and then training and team behavior should be highlighted to make sure to promote quality prevention errors. So, we have a couple different things in systems. One is we have a corrective action. So that is something's gone wrong, and we're doing something to prevent something from recurring. A preventive action is something that we do that has not gone wrong, but we see that if we don't do something, something could go wrong. Whether you know or not, many of the standards have taken out preventive actions out of the standards. It's now controlled by risk-based thinking within the organization. But if you have a preventive action, and it's part of the risk-based thinking, great. So the human factors can impact preventive as well as corrective actions that happen within the organization. On the individual level, the individuals really need to know what the human factors are, what's been communicated to them, what the responsibilities are, and how that impacts internal customers as well as external customers, as well as providers or the suppliers and so forth within that impact these. Within the human factor prevention of manufacturing, there are 6 main categories that have to be considered. They are ergonomics, right? The second one is equipment, right? How does the equipment impact that? Okay. The next one is the environment, the culture. Here's that famous feelings one. And then competence. So when you're considering a program related to human factors, these are the 6 categories that can relate to essentially the manufacturing errors and so forth. Right? But they can also apply, when we talk about manufacturing, we're talking about the whole facility, wrapping your arms around the whole facility, not just out on the production floor, but the whole thing. So in ergonomics, we're looking at the machine, the tool design, the flow, and intuitive to use complexity of operations within the organization. The equipment, make sure it's suitable, appropriate. The clothing, so dealing with food, beverage, right, pharmaceuticals and so forth. You have to have the right clothing and so forth, and electronics. We're dealing with the ESD and so forth. All those things have to be considered. The access to the equipment, raw materials. Right? So what does some of these things sound like and things that you're doing within your business? Kaizen, lean, organizational things and so forth. Yeah, it's all related to that. And then we have the environment, the time of day. It's the I worked for Pratt Whitney years ago, testing jet engines and components and working in vibration lab and so forth, shaking engines and type of thing, and working rotating shifts during testing. It was tough, right? You never knew when you were supposed to sleep, when you were supposed to eat, when you were supposed to do things and so forth. So all of those things impacted the human factors, with what was going on. Lighting, noise, distraction. One time I went to a company, they had called me in because they were having problems with non-conforming product. And it was like a assembly line, and they had belts going down. They had people sitting on each side of the belt, and the goal of them was they were supposed to inspect all the product coming through, for non-conformances. So I'm looking out there, and one person on side's talking to the other person, the product's going by, and then the other talking to the other, and I'm hearing things about vacation, I'm hearing things about shopping, and I'm hearing all kinds of things. And I said, you don't need me. It's like, well, everybody was distracted, and this stuff was going by and by and by. And that's well, first you need to fix the process where it's coming, right? And then you don't have to do that. So culture, the management attitude, can do, can't do, attitudes, customer values, local cultures, can impact all this, and then some of the adequate resourcing. And the feelings, again, the mental state, physical health, perception of your worth, ambition, view of authority, and confidence, right? And coworker relationships. And then the last one, competence. Again, the ability to apply skills and knowledge. And then, experience, documentation, instructions, training, coaching, and help and support through all of this. So there is a lot going on within the organization. And again, it doesn't matter what type of business or organization you're in, they all come into play. So non-conforming corrective action. So a robust corrective action process considers the impact of human factors. And so corrective actions and so forth, you need to consider the human factors. And that is typically addressed during the root cause determination of the analysis. Okay? And going back and considering the 12, dirty dozen, as well as the different categories and so forth, taking a look at all of those, what can we do? Your corrective action document, right? Now it can be electronic, it does not be hard copy type of thing. Should have some key things in it related to this. One of them is containment required? So if you do have a nonconformity, has it impacted any other processes or product? So you should be going and saying, okay, stuff already went through. Now we found something. Did it impact what went through? Okay. That may involve going into inventory. It may be involving going and looking at data. That was, sent to the customer, that was provided to the customer. It could be many different things. The worst thing would be you have to tell a customer that they have not performed a product and you should put it on hold. Something to that effect. Then there should be something that says this other product or processes, and if it is yes, then what are we going to do about it? Now the third thing. Was nonconformity impacted by any human factors? Yes or no? And then if it is yes, then describe what action that you're taking to reduce the risk of potential impact in the future of human factors. Okay. How many organizations have something like this in your system? How many have something related to the first one? Okay, some. The second one? See some do it. And the third? Typically. So a robust corrective action system would have these things in it, okay, to make it more valuable to the organization. So notice that in the second or third one, there's code. So do any of you have, let's say a scrap codes, in your system? Some do, right? Do you have over 200 numbers in it? There's codes? Less than 5? So you could develop a human factors coding system, just like the non-conforming. Okay. Remember too, or also that with the standards that product is defined as one of four generic categories. It's hardware, software, service, or process materials. Still within the ISO world. Bless you. Those are the main categories. So service can be paperwork. If you receive paperwork that's not right, it is considered non-conforming product. So one company I worked with years ago, setting up a quality management system, their number one non-conformance was paperwork going from the office to production. So production, after they understood this and everything, they set up a non-conforming paper bin. And when they reviewed the documentation, if it wasn't correct, it was tagged and was put in the non-conforming bin and was not touched until the office came out and corrected it. They didn't get the drawing. They had the wrong revision. The quantities weren't right. The shop order number was missing. There weren't things on it. Production said, we're not going to touch it. Because knowing that concept, it was the fastest process that got fixed in that organization you ever want to see. It was amazing because it affected everything else downstream and everything. So with human factor codes, in the AS 9100 Space Defense Standard, the nonconformance form that we use to document any nonconformances found has a block or cell on the front page, and you have to go in and you have to identify a code. Now there are codes for management, there are codes for the manufacturing and so forth, but there's also codes for human factors. So it forces you, when you're answering a corrective action, okay, to address other human factors, and as well as any other factors. There's an organization called the IAQG, which is the International Aerospace Quality Group, and they are responsible for the standards for the aviation defense industry. They're broken up by three sectors in the world. There's the Americas, North and South, there's the European, and there's the Asia Pacific network. So in here, this 9101 F form, Form 4, is what we have to use as our authorization document non-conformances. So there are four codes. One is HF1, lack of attention or concentration. Definition stated being unfocused or uninterested in task. Pressure and stress for 2. And then 3, being distracted. And then fatigue. So we talked earlier about stress and fatigue being the number 1. And that impact, and I gave some of the definitions for that. So you'd be encouraged to set up, even do your own, system. So,
How come they don't have lack of knowledge or the rest of that dirty dozen? I mean, training.
Because then there's a competence column in here in the table and so forth. So be able to training, competence, and those kind of things. So you can select multiple codes and stuff. So keys for error management system or EMS plan. So some of these other plans that you have, within your organization, there are certain things that you consider and have. So first one, commitment of sponsorship by top management. Right? No different than any other program that you're implementing or putting in place in your organization. Establish a core team, essentially, to implement, support, deploy. Conduct an awareness training for management. Communicate the purpose and objective for implementing EMS. Again, not environmental. Negotiate and agree a just culture. So just culture is having the feeling that, yes, this is the culture of the organization. We can report these things. We don't have to worry about repercussions or something like that, with the fact that, oh, we're doing all these things to help improve the sustained success of an organization, right? So it's called a just culture. Train all employees in human factors. Right? So whether you do an awareness session for safety in your organization, whether you do it for your quality management system or environmental management system or whatever system you have, you need to have all employee awareness that you need to know about it. Provide ongoing communications of errors, investigation, root causes, and action. Communication can be putting stuff up on board, screen, could be if you have management, those that are registered have management review. There could be one of the metrics in there. And then report error prevention, preventive improvements made with the benefits. What did we gain? Just like if you're doing something else. You're reducing scrap, what we gain by doing that. Okay. So then here's the maturity level or model. This was based on safety culture maturity model by Dr. Mark Fleming, the chartered psychologist. You can find this information. So it's based on 5 levels. So level 1, you're just following the requirements. And the second one is small part of the employer is educated in human factors. And then we go a little bit further, large part of the organization is educated. Then we get to the 4th, it's a natural part of root cause analysis. Right? It's integrated in the system, it's the thing we do. And then the 5th level is the programs implement and sustain. So what we're looking for is 1 to 2 spread beyond the requirement. And then going from 2 to 3, the manager starts to request training. They can see the potential value of this within the organization. And then we go to 3 to 4, it's part of the employee training. So if you were to have this as part of new employee orientation, where you go through all these things about your system and so forth to get an overview, if you include this in there, then right off the bat, they understand what this is all about. And then 5 is the programs in place with policies and goals. So going up, improving human factors culture, but also is increasing consistency within the organization. So the key employee requirements would be to be aware of conformity, product conformity, and how human factors can influence that. Product safety. Now, you may not be providing the final product that the end user sees. You may be supplying something that your customer uses in the final product that they send to their customer. So sometimes we think that, well, the final, customer or supplier is the one that's responsible, but no, all of you have some impact on that final product by conforming requirements and so forth. And then ethical behavior is part of this. If you see something, say something. Right? That type of thing. So human factors, again, culture, ergonomics, equipment, competence, environmental feelings, and integrating quality and business and the human factors systems into one. It's easier to manage, right, than having 3, 4 different systems within the organization. So in conclusion, all aspects of human life have benefited from efforts to apply and understand human capabilities, limitations, design, equipment, and procedures. And this comes from the Human Factors and Ergonomic Society stories from the first 50 years of the systems. Some of the references, or all of the references here, are shown human factors in new manufacturing from the IET AG, the AS 9100, ISO 9001, ISO 9000, fundamentals of vocabulary, standard. Okay. Incidentally, those that are registered to ISO 9001, Quality Management System Standard, if you say that you're registered to ISO 9000, you're not. Because 9000 is a dictionary. You can't be registered to a dictionary. So if I see an organization on their website, they say registered to ISO 9000, it's like, no, you're not. You need to change your website. You're registered to ISO 9001 Quality Management System requirements. And then the human factors and economic society. So, questions? So,
How do you start from scratch in an organization that has no quality management system?
so the first thing is that you select and decide what kind of standard you want to conform to. So if you're interested in just we call it an L version quality management system, then you would start with the ISO 9001 2015 version. And in that, it has all the requirements that would be necessary to set up a quality management system. If you were starting a business from scratch and you didn't know what to put in place, if you put in the standard, it'll give you all of those things that you would need from the leadership, from determining the context of the organization, what your strategic direction is, and then it goes through all of the things that it's called operations. So we're doing custom requirements. If you do design and development, it's doing that. If you're doing, I'm going to say purchasing, the purchasing part, and then the, let's say, production part of the process. And then it goes into what you need to do to improve the system and the monitoring of your systems and so forth. So that would be a good place to start implementing it. You wouldn't have to be registered or certified, but you'd have the basis for if you did want to go further and become registered to it. And that would set the foundation for the quality management system. And then within that, you could also start looking at some of these other systems. What is our business system? How does that fit in? Considering human factors, how does that fit in? And then just grow it from there. That's what the suggestion would be. Anyone else?
Rick, if my organization has a basic quality management system or a vanilla version like you just talked about, is it easy to then qualify for ISO? How hard is it to then pursue ISO certification?
Okay, so if an organization says that they are in compliance with the standard, okay, the first question is, well, who said you are? Right? Now, if you say yourselves, well, then you have to be doing everything that's in the standard, right? Which means that you have to do, the management review, you have to have the data, you have to do the analysis and so forth. You have to have something in place to approve your providers and reevaluate them. So if you don't have those things in place, then you have to put them in place, right? So then it's more work. But if you really do have a system that is in compliance with that, and you can show, oh, we do our, management reviews, 2 times a year, you've got evidence and so forth, you've got that. So if you have that, it's a matter of just signing up with a certification body known as a registrar and going through the process, and they're done in 2 stages. Stage 1 is we would look at the documentation that you're required to have to meet the standard. And then 4 to 6 weeks later, come back and do the stage 2, which is where we would look at the actual conducting of the processes to make sure that you are doing those types of things. Typically, the certification body or auditors are looking for 90 days worth of data. So if you started from scratch, you said you wanted to get registered, and you didn't have anything, you'd be looking at minimum 90 days, to get that in. But if you got information that you can use to support the process and audit, then that can be shortened up. The shortest I've ever heard of is 7 days. But everything was,
Can you speak to why companies would implement a quality management system? From your observation, is it customer driven, doing this because the customer says I have to, or is it more strategic decision to grow the business and it's the right thing to do?
yeah. The best systems that I have seen implemented in any management system, medical device, environmental, and environmental aerospace, the most effective ones are the ones that the organization wanted to do it themselves to help the strategic direction, to help the business, to bring consistency, within the organization on how you want things done. The ones that struggle with it the most are the ones that say our customer said we had to do it. They just seem to fight it. Like it's customer driven. Right? We don't want to do this, but the customer said if we don't do it, they're not going to do business with us anymore. So by saying that, yes, we need something to manage the business to help future sustained, growth and so forth. And
From your experience, which of those two categories is in the majority? Are there more that do it because it's the right thing to do and it's part of a strategy, or more that are doing it just because the customer says you've got to have it?
probably 70, 30%. The customer says it's better to do it. Or regulatory agencies say we have to have something in place. Okay. Or, for instance, government contracts are showing up now saying you have to be AS 900 certified. And some of those and so forth. So they're saying, yeah, government's our customer. We wouldn't do it if we didn't have to.
So I wanted to kind of verify what I think, maybe get your feedback on it. So with a quality management system, you have defined processes on how things should go. So let's say you have those processes, you have those procedures, people should be following them. And then when you continue to have non-conformances and try to address them through corrective action, and your root cause is human error, the focus should then be kind of digging deeper into that human error to kind of figure out where they fall in the categories and the dirty dozen to address what's causing the human error more so than a deficiency of process or document.
Right. So it's kind of a combination. So with that process diagram I showed, we have all these other interactions, right? So a process may be getting things from other processes. Like when I used production, maybe getting stuff from purchasing, right? So it's affecting the production process. So I'm auditing, let's say, production. And now I see that there are problems elsewhere. The non-conformance isn't to production, it's to the internal supplier. So then they would have to look at it and say, okay, yeah, this was a human factors problem. And they would have to address it to try and find out, okay, what can we do differently? So maybe if it's all, hence form filled out by hand, maybe now they go to electronic. So now they've kind of reduced some of that human factor by having it electronic rather than all hand. So then you may say, okay, where else in the organization is this a problem? So then by having a human factors program throughout, you could be reporting, okay, we're having errors related by people not filling out the forms, right, correctly. So then you go from an organization standpoint, all right, how do we address this? So if you have a team set up, then this team can look at it and say, look at the trend, Pareto things, and say, these are the major ones. Let's go address that. The human factors, correct. Yeah. So in the video I was trying to show, it goes back to aircraft many years ago, where the flap and the landing gear levers were identical and they were next to each other. So there were crashes where, on the ground, you're taxiing and they put the wrong one down. They folded up the landing gear. So then, looking at it from a human factor standpoint and so forth, they changed the shape of the knob. So if you ever happen to get on an aircraft and when you walk in, look at the pilots, typically you'll see like a round knob, right? And it has a handle. That's the flaps. And then landing gear is another one. So, but now it's a lot of electronic stuff. Okay, did that
It did. I
answer?
think just like a lot of my experience in manufacturing and quality, it's like you don't want to put human error as your root cause, but it's almost like saying that that's acceptable if you're actually digging deeper into what factors are causing that and then mitigating those instead of trying to correct.
Absolutely. So if you went through the root cause and you identified 5 potential things, right? And maybe, it was the first one was procedure, the second one was the design, the third one was human factors, right? You'd go address first the procedures, right? And then take care of that. You still have the problem because remember, you can't close out a corrective action until 2 things have happened. One is implemented and the other is to verify that the problem has gone away, right? Or been reduced. So by doing that, if the procedure didn't work, then you look at the second one, right? The design, right? And then, well, that didn't work. Well, what's the next one the team decided on? Well, human factors. Okay, let's go address that one. Because you may not be able to address everything all at once, right? Just because of the magnitude of it. But you need to identify, what are the potential causes and then some systematic way of going through and identifying.
This may sound like a really silly question. It's actually addressed to the whole group. As we looked at the Dirty Dozen screenshot, up there on the screen, on the wall. So I didn't relate to every one of them. I could see that quality issues come about from all of them. By show of hands, did everybody feel the same way that you did, or like seeing hands and heads nod? But almost everybody says all. Okay, good, thanks.
There isn't a clean dozen that I'm aware of. But there are, best practices, things that you can put in place to, address, all of these. And so. Anything else?
Where would I find this list?
Yep, if you Google Dirty Dozen,
Okay, it's a common term.
yep.
Are we gonna share the chat?
Dr. Google? But also, if you go to the human factors and so forth, and society, it's all there, right? Dr. Google has everything. Yeah, don't pull up that first video. It's kind of cute.
Are you going to share this, or is there someone who can get this presentation?
That's your choice. That we certainly will follow up, but
Sure.
you're comfortable with it.
Okay.
All right, Rick, thank you for being our first Manufacturing Matters presenter. I think we kicked off the series very well. I'm going to say goodbye to our web viewers, and then those that are here get to go on a tour. Yay!
Can I talk to the web?
Oh, you want to talk to us?
Well, no,
web
no,
viewers?
not really, but what I wanted to talk about the tour, and I just wanted to say, any of you that are here remotely, if you ever want a tour, just call us, and when you're in Langston, we'd be glad to give you a tour as well. For everybody else, though, I was thinking from a tour standpoint, well, a couple things. One, I don't know if we ever told you, but restrooms are right around the corner here. There's men's rooms and women's restrooms. And we were forgot to put out water, so there's bottles of water for anybody that would like in the fridge. For those of you that want a tour, I thought we'd do tours in two ways. We're ending a little bit early, but those of you that just want a quick tour because you got to get back to work, because that would be me for sure. I could give a 15-minute tour. I'm Mary Kohler, by the way. I'm one of the owners here at the plant. I'm the president of the company. We can give a quick tour, so we could do about a 15-minute tour where we just walk through real quick and you can just see everything. It's kind of interesting because we have a print shop here, we have a sign shop, and we also have a fulfillment division or department. So you could have a quick tour, and I'll give that one. I'd like to introduce Nate Heisey. He's got his hand up there. He's in the corner. He's my ops manager. He's part of my executive leadership team. He and Mike was the guy that introduced himself early. He's the guy with not as much hair here, but more hair here. This guy with glasses. He was waiting for us. He'll give a tour too. Those two can give longer tours where they'll talk even more about the routers. They can show you a little bit more in depth.
Melissa is available.
And Melissa, so we've got 3 people. One of our salespeople is available as well. We can give a little bit more in-depth tour that you can get a little bit more into it. If you want the real short tour, I'd probably leave with you first. And we come back here to the front door, and if you've got more questions, if you want to ask more, we certainly would stay around or could show you more stuff. But those that need to hit the road quickly can do so. So, does anybody not want a tour? It's okay if you don't. It really is okay if you don't.
I think it's a
Okay,
benefit.
so almost everybody's got a tour. All right. By a show of hands, how many want a quick tour? Quite a few. So you know what? Maybe we'll do 2 quick tours. So maybe Melissa and I will, because that's a large group and you won't be able to hear. We've got a lot. It's an old building with lots of stuff. So Melissa and I will be downstairs. Get water. Get a quick bathroom break if you need it. And those of you that want the longer tour, just wait a minute or two, and Nate and Mike will grab you guys and take you around. Okay? No, you don't need safety glasses. You just need to have closed